Hey guys, welcome to my channel, and today we're going to be talking about Crocs. Crocs is a company that I'm very familiar with because I've been wearing their shoes all throughout my childhood and started recollecting back in 2017. I have nearly 50 pairs of Crocs, which is definitely something that a lot of people tend to find strange. They kind of look at it like, oh, why? I can't necessarily blame them for wondering why either. Crocs are a shoe that hasn't always been the most popular. Right now I feel like it's kind of in a good time where a lot of people wear Crocs and own Crocs, but there was definitely a period of time where you did not want to be caught dead in Crocs. They were constantly kind of being mocked. They were kind of seen as this really embarrassing shoe that was really only meant to be worn on the feet of people who worked a lot outside or were gardeners. Somehow the company was able to build up success and be a pretty common and popular shoe. So today I wanted to discuss the rise and fall of the company and the lawsuit that they're currently facing. Let's get into it. I really doubt that there's a huge group of people who are just sitting there dying to hear the entire history of Crocs, but I'm gonna share their history anyways. So Crocs were invented back in 2002 by three men, Lyndon Hansen, George Bedecker, and Scott Siemens. The three of them loved boating, and once while they were sailing in the Caribbean, they discovered something amazing. They found a boating shoe that was created by a company called Foam Creations that was based in Canada. And these shoes were designed with a material called cross-slide, which made the shoes really lightweight and perfect for boating. The three of them then decided to try and obtain the rights to be able to manufacture the shoe themselves, and obviously they did, thus leading to the invention of Crocs, with their first design of Crocs being released in 2002, aptly named the Beach. These shoes captured the hearts of boaters everywhere, and their name was largely inspired by the reptile, crocodile, as both were meant to be really good on both land and water. People were naturally a little bit unsure of Crocs at first, but it was really their functionality that drew people in, especially well liked among chefs, gardeners, nurses, and children. All people with lifestyles who required a comfortable, durable, and washable shoe. In 2005, Crocs sold around 6 million pairs, and it was later that year a woman named Sherry Smeltzer invented the gibbets charms that would go into the shoes, an idea which Crocs got the rights to for $10 million in 2006. But despite some of their initial popularity, Crocs were definitely still seen as a weird, unlikable, ugly shoe for a large period of time. In fact, in 2010, according to Time magazine, Crocs was one of the 50 worst inventions, among a list that included tanning beds, segways, and asbestos. I don't know, it seems a little bit dramatic to me. At least Crocs didn't risk the hells of the people in the cast of The Wizard of Oz, but you know, it is what it is. I'm not entirely sure what flipped the switch and made Crocs suddenly cool, but I do remember that for a large majority of my childhood, they weren't. I did wear them growing up as a child, but then when I got to that age where people were just judgmental assholes and dictated everything you did, I decided to stop wearing Crocs. And I didn't start wearing them again until 2017 when they started bordering on being cool again. Around this time is definitely when Crocs started picking up and being less of a disgrace to society. They were especially common among high schoolers and college students who participated in sports and activities and just kind of wanted a quick shoe to throw. It also became more of a statement piece, I think, when Visco girls started trending and they started wearing them, and then they kind of made the switch from being like, oh, this ugly, unwearable shoe to kind of quirky and cute and fun. And so it was definitely more seen as acceptable in society to wear Crocs. It was also in 2017 when Crocs started to get different collaborations that made the company a little bit more exciting and drew people into the company. Designer Christopher Kane, not that Christopher Kane, was one of the first people to collaborate with Crocs, and then shortly after was the $850 platform Balenciaga Crocs, which definitely drew a lot of attention to the shoe. And now obviously Crocs has had all sorts of different collaborations with people and companies, including Drew Barrymore, Justin Bieber, Lisa Frank, Hidden Valley Ranch, basically so many companies. Crocs also started the tradition of National Croc Day back in 2017, but didn't release its first National Croc Day shoe until 2018, which was a gold crocodile printed shoe, and every year since then they've released a shoe or product in honor of National Croc Day, which of course is Croctober 23rd. Crocs also definitely got a huge boost in sales back in 2020 when the coronavirus hit and people just wanted a more practical shoe for hanging out around the house, which ended in a lot of people just loving the brand and continuing to wear them even after they were allowed to step foot outside. So Crocs was no longer seen as this disgusting, revolting shoe, and it became kind of popular. And honestly, I think at least every day I go out, I see at least one other person wearing Crocs, which definitely didn't happen when I started wearing Crocs. Crocs are definitely a shoe that a lot of people love now, and they've even expanded besides just the basic clogs that they started out with. They have many different styles, including like the Croc band ones, they have platform Crocs, they have tennis shoes, boots, all different types of shoes for whatever people choose to wear on their feet. Crocs definitely is feeding into their newfound fame as well, and I feel like they're trying desperately to stay relevant by constantly releasing different collabs with any companies. This isn't intended to be shade, it's just an observation. I think they will genuinely like collab with anybody who wants to collab with them and make Crocs pretty much. So they're definitely just trying to hold on to that, and they're trying to make, you know, more trendy and stylized shoes as opposed to just the simple clog that they were initially known for. However, as of 2022, Crocs has been facing a lawsuit for claims of deceit and false advertising because the shoe that was once labeled as a shoe for boating supposedly just can't hold up in the great outdoors anymore. The initial complaint, of course, was filed back in 2022 in November in the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of California, and basically had the claims that Crocs aren't good for what they're advertised for, that the company neglects to share that the main product used to manufacture these shoes, which is of course cross-site, is a shoe that shrinks in direct exposure to sunlight and water and, you know, shrivels up to be several sizes smaller to the point where the consumer can no longer wear the shoe because it doesn't fit. The brand, of course, has marketed itself as a shoe that can be worn outdoors. There's several different pictures of them being worn, you know, outside near water. And so that is where the false advertising came in. A judge has rejected Crocs' claims to have the 4 class action lawsuits dismissed. I've seen some videos of shrunken Crocs, and I have to admit it isn't necessarily a good look. However, in my opinion, these days Crocs definitely markets itself besides just being a boating shoe. I mean, I know that's what it initially was, but I mean, you're not gonna look at this shoe and be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna wear that to go boating. Like, they're definitely becoming more stylized and meant to be worn in various different circumstances, and they're definitely, you know, made for other things besides just boating shoe, besides just like a water shoe, you know, they're just a shoe. I do have to admit that a lot of Crocs products do seem like they're marketed still for the outdoors, especially like the sandals, which are obviously mostly a summertime thing, and even the classic clogs are still definitely seen as like a good outdoor by the pool shoe. I don't know if Crocs have always faced these issues. I've really only been hearing issues of like shrunken Crocs within the past several years, and like even my grandma has several Crocs that go back to literally like when they first started making Crocs. 20 years at least, and they've still hold up. I have Crocs that go back to 2017 that have still held up. So I don't know. I don't know if this is relevant to anything that's been happening with the shrinking shoes, but I did feel like it was worth pointing out that in 2021, Crocs did make a slight shift in the way that they design their shoes. They collaborated with a corporation called Dow's, and they focused on making their Crocs more environmentally friendly. And so the main material that's producing their Crocs now is a closed cell resin called Cross-Lite, which is essentially just a slightly altered version of what they were already using to produce Crocs, which I guess somehow could have altered the Crocs and made them, you know, more shrinkable in the heat, or it could just be completely unrelated and I could just be pulling shit out of nowhere. I don't know, but I figured it was still worth mentioning. I was definitely trying to keep my opinion unbiased because just because I love Crocs doesn't mean that they can't do any wrong, and so I still wanted to take the situation fairly. So I was researching people whose Crocs have shrunk, and I honestly don't necessarily think it's false advertising. I obviously don't know the specifics behind the lawsuit and the people who filed for the lawsuit, so I'm not trying to invalidate their experience. I'm an empathist. I'm gonna try and see everybody's side. So this is just my opinion, my experience with Crocs. Obviously, if they feel like they were wronged, they have the right to do what they need to do to feel better. But I personally just don't think that the false advertisement claims are necessarily true. Because of the claims, I feel like it is safe to assume that they left their Crocs outside or wore them outside a lot and they ended up shrinking. But I felt like it was kind of well known to people that if you leave Crocs outside, they're going to shrink. There's been lots of videos of people intentionally leaving Crocs outside just to get them a little bit smaller, or even boiling them in heat to intentionally get them to grow smaller. So I don't think it was necessarily hidden information that they do shrink in exposure to heat. And I don't think it's necessarily just any exposure to heat. Like, you know, you're not going to step outside and the Croc's going to just shrivel up on your foot. It has to be left in direct sunlight for a long time, which, yeah, it's gonna shrivel up if you leave it in direct sunlight. I'll do that too. While Crocs were made to handle the great outdoors, I don't think that means they were necessarily meant to be left in the great outdoors without care. And I feel like because of what Crocs are, a lot of people think they can just throw them outside and leave them there. They can just do whatever they want with them, but they're still a shoe and they still have the potential to get damaged if they're left to just fare the weather by themselves. I realize that $40 is a lot to pay for a shoe that no longer fits, but I feel like some of it is the way that people treat their shoes. I've personally had several Crocs for years that I've worn outside several times. I've left by my aunt's pool while I've swam for several hours. I've had them in the pool with me for several hours and they've ended up fine at the end of the situation. Like, they can definitely withstand Mother Nature for several hours. I feel like it's just the constant being left in them, or like even in hot cars. I've seen videos of people leaving them in hot cars. Of course they're gonna shrink up when they're left in that amount of heat. And I guess part of the claim was that Crocs didn't, you know, list online like some sort of warning that, you know, if you leave them in direct exposure to heat, they're gonna, you know, like shrink, and that, you know, it should have been a warning when people were purchasing these Crocs. And I definitely think it's one of those things that is kind of imply, you know, like when you buy a white t-shirt, it doesn't say on the packaging, do not pour red wine on this, but it's still like common sense. You know, if you pour red wine on a white shirt, it's gonna get stained. If you leave shoes in direct heat for multiple hours or days on end, they're gonna shrivel up. I guess if you don't really know much about Crocs though, I mean, you could buy them thinking, oh, like I can just leave them outside on my deck, like it'll be fine. And then, you know, they shrink up, you're obviously disappointed, which is valid, but I don't think it's really that shocking that they can't, you know, be left in heat for long periods of time. Like I said, I genuinely always try and see every side of the situation. I'm trying to walk in these people's shoes, which might be kind of hard because I'm guessing they shrunk. I'm sorry. But just as someone who's worn Crocs almost daily, I haven't really experienced too many issues with them. And I don't think it's necessarily Crocs trying to lie about their shoes or make false claims. I think it's just a misinterpretation of what the shoes are for. Obviously, in my opinion, I love Crocs and mine have always withstood the test of time for me. I've had them outside numerous occasions and they've been fine for me. Several people I know have had Crocs that have been fine. I know, like my friend Caitlin, who also collects Crocs, she has had some of her Crocs shrink, but she's admitted, she's like, oh yeah, it's because I left it, you know, in my hot car overnight, like the sun shrunk them. Like, she's like, I'm not gonna get mad at the company because of something I did. So you guys can let me know what you think in your opinion. Do you think that the lawsuit is just completely justified and Crocs is just being deceitful and dishonest, or do you think it was more of, you know, a misunderstanding of what Crocs can do and that the lawsuit is a little bit extreme? Let me know what y'all think. That's gonna be all for this video. That is the history of Crocs and how they came to be. And I'll see y'all in my next video. Peace out.